Welcome to the Women Leaders Association Daily Member Podcast, where we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. I'm your host, Julianne Kirkland. And in each Daily Member Podcast, we will pick out a great speaker from one of our meetings that we thought you would enjoy. You can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. If you would like to get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or find a networking group near you, or if you just need access to the membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Now let's tune in for this incredible message.
But most people don't think about what does it mean, how your giving can be life-saving. So I want to tell you a little bit about blood donation. And for those of you that might be a little squeamish at the sight of blood or needles, there are no pictures here that will upset you. So I know that it's not for everyone, but you will be fine. If you want to get to the next slide, I'll start with our organization. It's Medic Regional Blood Center. We were established in 1958 by Dr. Carl Nelson under the sponsorship of the Knoxville Academy of Medicine. We are a non-for-profit, as I mentioned, and we really started the blood center because at the time, in those years, the hospitals were having to collect their own blood for their own patients, and the community just recognized that there was a need to consolidate that and to centralize blood collection, testing, and distribution. So today, Medic serves 24 hospitals in a 22-county region. We have 135 employees. I saw someone earlier make a chat, and they worked in a hospital, so I understand you. We're 24/7 operation. We have 4 locations here in the Knoxville area of Knoxville, Farragut, Crossville, and Athens. We conduct 6 to 8 mobile drives daily. We have 3 regional advisory committees. There in the healthcare world, there are lots of associations and accreditations, and so we're AABB accredited. We're governed by the Food and Drug Administration, which I think most people would not think about blood as being a FDA thing. I will use food analogies in this presentation, but the FDA considers us a drug, and because the product is actually transfused into a human. We're also the member of the America's Blood Centers of America, Tennessee Association of Blood Bank, Alliance for Community Transfusion Services, and Burke. And I want to take just a second to talk about Burke. This is a community of independent blood centers across the country, and some of you are in Chattanooga, so Blood Assurance is also a part of this. This is where across the nation, if we have a crisis event and the blood center in that area needs immediate access to blood, then we partner with each other and rotate to be able to do that. The last time that Burke was activated, if you will, was right before the Hurricane Ian hit Florida. We knew that the hospitals were going to have needs, but the blood centers weren't going to be able to operate. And so we've preemptively shipped blood to the hospital. The blood centers, emptied their shelves for the hospitals, and we preemptively prepared for restocking the blood centers. And I'll come back to a little bit more about that later. So this is our region. You can see when we're talking about it, the 24 counties and 22 areas. We do have 2 counties in Kentucky, and these are the hospitals we serve. But in our region, we provide the blood products for 1.5 million people. So who benefits from blood donations? Blood is something that most people don't really think about. I think if you think that you're in the hospital and somebody has cancer or you have an anemia issue, you've just given birth to a child. Trauma victims use them. Autoimmune patients need blood. Surgical patients need blood. Most of us assume that if you're going to the hospital and you fit in one of these categories, the hospital is just going to have it. And without giving a whole lot of thought about where did it come from. If you'll just there you go. One thing that's really, really important to know is there is no substitution. There is no chemical substitution that can substitute for blood donated from a human for the purpose of helping a human. So a little trivia. I didn't put the polling into my presentation, but just for a second, if you just give yourself a minute to think about, do you know how many blood types there are? And the options are 4, 2, 6, or 8. There are 8 blood types. There's type O, type A, type B, and type AB. And each of those have a positive or negative Rh factor. So you have A, B, O, and AB, positive or negative. What is the most common type of donation? I'm giving the choices here are plasma, whole blood, double red cells, or platelets. Whole blood. If you'll move to the next slide, please. So this is a short little slide that kind of gives quite a bit of information on it. So the tube chart there on the left talks about, well, what is the composition of blood products? There's plasma, which is 55% of blood. White blood cells or platelets is 4%, and the red blood cells is 41%. And so each of these have a different important role in healthcare. So the whole blood that we talked about is all of that. It's a unit that contains all of the parts. We need it for all blood types, and we can separate those parts, and you can actually help create 3 different blood products to save lives. The double red cell is what we call at our particular blood center. We use an Alex automation, but in that particular case, we're separating the red cells from the plasma and the platelets. And so the plasma and platelets are returned, and we keep the red cells. And so we are able to get 2 products for one, so you can save double the lives. Platelets, another automated process. We really like to have people who are A positive, B positive, AB positive, or AB negative to donate platelets. It takes a little bit longer of a process, but literally we're separating the blood, separating the platelets, and putting everything back. We're using it for cancer patients, transplant patients, and more. Plasma, we really like AB positive and AB negative for that. And plasma is used to help treat trauma patients, burn victims, and cancer patients. I think to know that everything that in the process is determined by the FDA. We're looking at donors' eligibility based on their health, their lifestyle, and travel is important. Weight minimums, there are weight minimums, there are age minimums. A 16-year-old can donate blood, but they must have parental consent. However, a 17-year-old and older does not have to have parental consent. We look at things like hemoglobin, which is oxygen carrying capacity, proportion of red cells, which is your hematocrit rating. We look at what medications you are. And then at the very beginning, at the end of the day, we're not taking care of patients. We want well and healthy people. So we will screen for that up first. Are you feeling healthy and well today? And we'll do a minor physical exam. So I do think it's important. Like if you've never donated blood, well, what happens? What should I expect when they come? And the first thing when you come in is we're going to check your ID, make sure you are who you say you are, the driver's license or something like that, and just answer a couple of questions, demographics, address, phone, how can we reach you? The screening questions, we're going to be reviewing those medical, behavioral, and travel history questions. You may have just taken a great cruise to Cancun, Mexico, and it might be a malaria endemic area. And so we might want to say, well, we want you to wait a little bit longer before you donate blood due to some of those types of travel. We check the vital signs during screening, and it's just really, really important to know that we and all other blood centers, this is not just Medic, but we're strictly regulated by the FDA. So the questions are asked this process, they are personal, but they are required. And it's for the interest and the safety of the blood product for the compromised patient that they will eventually be transfused by. Then the donation itself will have collection text. They will look at the veins in your arms, both arms, and determine which one is the best one. And it takes about 10 minutes. That part of it is only about 10 or 15 minutes. And being hydrated is extremely important. While during your donation, being able to find a good vein, and also for recovery. So we are always going to ask you to eat a snack and get something to drink. And please, in the process, if you feel a little bit lightheaded or ill, just let the staff know. And that's kind of the process of what you need to expect. So another question, so which blood type or what blood type is known as the universal donor? So here are these blood type options here. Take just a second and maybe you know, but go ahead and press next. The universal donor is O negative. What do we mean by universal donor? I happen to be an O negative blood type, which means that when I donate blood, my blood product can be transfused into any other human with any other blood type. This is most commonly used for trauma, and the hospital does not have time. This person needs blood, and the hospital does not have time to go through the blood typing process. They will automatically give them O negative blood. There is a blood type that's known as the universal receiver. So here are your choices. And when you press next, we'll find the answer. And that is AB positive. So an AB positive can receive blood from any blood type. Little known blood fact. So I do want to talk about some other blood donation facts. So I think it's important, like I said earlier, people do not really think about the fact that you're in a car accident and you've got a pretty serious cut and there's a lot of blood. You're going to need to replace that. And people do just assume that it's at the hospital. How do we accomplish that? Well, it's important for you to know that blood is needed every 2 seconds in the United States. And for the FDA, since we're in Tennessee, we use the ball. All donors are volunteers and donors are not paid. Now, let me stop there because many of you probably in this area have seen plenty of billboards regarding the plasma centers, especially during the economic times we have, saying you can earn money by donating plasma. That is true. The difference between a plasma center and a volunteer blood center like Medic, and since we have people here from Chattanooga, is also Blood Assurance, is because the plasma centers are collecting plasma, but the plasma is not transfused into a patient. The plasma is sold to pharmaceutical companies. It's a very important part of the process because the pharmaceuticals are people who are taking that, breaking it down, and making all kinds of medications, therapeutic drugs, and they're using that plasma to be able to source that. The volunteer donor, any blood product that's donated at Medic, as a volunteer, is transfused into a human for the benefit of their health. And that's the difference between the two. Both play important roles in the healthcare arena, but the blood donor that's volunteering is volunteering, and it's going to actually go help save a patient's life. Approximately 38% of the U.S. population is eligible to donate blood, but less than 6% of the population actually does. And we have some new data that says that only 2.5% of that, it's not really 6%, it's getting lower, 2.5%. About 30% of the donors that come through the doors are first-time donors. They're doing it. And 70% are repeat donors. This is important information, and I'll show that on the next slide. So one thing to know, so the most popular blood donation was a whole blood donor, and a whole blood donor can donate every 56 days, which means if you're an eligible whole blood donor, you can give up to 6 times a year. But most donors, if they come to donate, they generally only donate between 1.5 to 2 times per year. So we rarely see the person who will come in every 56 days. 40% or more of blood donations are from people who give 4 or more times per year, and those are the people that are super donors. And again, 40% of the ones, they might give 4 times, they're not going to give the 6 times, but we do talk to those folks and really take care of them because they are super donors. They are really and truly giving of themselves, their time and their blood. So when you look at those statistics, it's really important to know that based on the 6% of the population in the United States who actually donate, that actually means that only 1% of the population is actually supplying the company with 40% of the blood needed. I'd like to repeat that because people are not donating every time that they can, right? So the 6% who actually do donate, when you narrow that down, 1% of the population, 1%, supplies the entire country with 40% of the blood that's needed. The average age of all donors is 43 years. The average length of blood donation, top to bottom, from the registration to the end, is about 45 minutes. And when I talk about blood donations being similar to food, it does have a shelf life. So the shelf life of a whole blood product is 42 days. The shelf life of a platelet, for example, is 7. So I like to think of those as like bananas. If you're giving platelets, the shelf life is 7. So it's for those of you that have been manufacturing in other environments, it is an incredibly complicated logistics system being able to balance supply and demand, because the hospitals don't know who's going to come in that is going to need a platelet for that trauma patient or those cancer patients. And so when you have the short shelf life, like a food product, it becomes very difficult to manage the supply and demand. And if you have trauma circumstances like I described before, it's also really, really important to kind of balance that out. I'm talking really fast. Hope everyone can keep up with me. So back to like who we are and what we do. When we come back to the people that are donating in this region, the blood is being used in these hospitals and the regions in which you live. It's supporting those hospitals. So if you or your family member has needed blood, it has probably come through Medic first, especially if you're in this particular region. I would also say too, when I'm talking about the birth, the response, the national response, I think a lot of times when we think about these major crises, trauma crises, for example, the Las Vegas shooting that happened a few years back. A lot of times at that point, you're going to see media coverage of people standing in line to donate blood. And I want to tell you that that is really critically important to donate blood when you have a crisis in your community. But I really do want to emphasize with all my heart, it is the people who donated blood just because that has the blood products on the shelf ready for the hospitals to use in the event of a crisis. It takes 48 to 72 hours from the time that person that's coming in after the crisis for it to go through that testing and safety processes before it's labeled and ready for a hospital to use. Is it critically important? Absolutely it is, because they are refilling the stock or the inventory supply or the supply chain. You can use all of those words, but it's the people who do it just because they want to give, to help someone, that is providing the blood product that's there when the unexpected happens. I will end my talk on that and do the next slide. There are lots of questions about the process of donating blood, so I would encourage you to go to our website. There's information, very more specific information about donating blood and what's eligibility. And the thing that I would say, common misconceptions that people might have about donating blood, for example, if you have diabetes, you can still donate blood. If you're on medication or you have high blood pressure, you can still donate blood. If you went to Cancun, we might ask you to wait a little bit longer, or some other country. But it's really important to just kind of take a minute to look at it. But a lot of times people think, well, I'm doing this, or maybe I've had a skin cancer at some point. There are all kinds of rules that FDA has, and so don't assume that you're not eligible based on your own thoughts. Take the time to find out.
Hey, my friend, if you enjoyed listening to this podcast, be sure to rate, review, and share your biggest takeaway. And if you're wanting more, you can access hundreds of recent speakers, book summaries, great articles, and more at no additional charge through your membership portal. You can also get involved in a Women Leaders Association mastermind group or a networking group near you. Or if you just need to access your membership portal, simply go to womenleaderspodcast.com to be connected. Because here at Women Leaders Association, we believe we go further, faster, and have more fun when we go together. That's all for today, my friends. Bye for now.